My name is Tarmack, and this, my dear friends, brothers, sisters, and gnomes alike, is a review of Rise and Shine on PC. I'm playing on an i7-5820K with 16GB of RAM and an nVidia GTX 1070 graphics card. Now, have you ever had a chance to sample two extremely similar products where one of the two was clearly superior? Let's talk about this silly little, quote, think and gun shooter by developer Super Mega Team, published by Adult Swim. It's out on Steam January 13th for $15 US. The game is also on Xbox One via the Windows Store for the same price on the same day. Okay, so Rise and Shine, as I mentioned, is a think and gun game according to the devs. Basically, it's a run and gun game, a term that you may be more familiar with, but it slows the action down in certain situations with a bit more of a puzzle structure, and as a result is more strategy skill-based than Twitch skill-based in parts. Meanwhile, other pieces are straight frantic shooting. You play as Rise, a lone child in the world of Game Earth, which is currently under attack by some weird robots and space marines. Rise is rather quickly entrusted with a famous gun given to you by someone who is totally not intended to be similar to another famous video game character as his dying act. And that gun's name is Shine. From there, it starts out as your standard side-scrolling run and gun, but mixes in more than a few neat mechanics along the way. From a gameplay perspective, Rise and Shine adds a few things that the run-and-gun genre could use more of. For starters, it includes a light cover system where occasionally, for specific fights, you'll be provided a wall that you can hide behind, peeking out to shoot but being vulnerable when you do. And the wall takes damage, so you don't want to hide there for too long. You also have the opportunity to use two different bullet types, regular and electrical, which affect squishy meat or mechanical targets more or less depending on which one you use. And further to that, you can augment these bullets by adding a charge shot, which gives the ability to shoot an explosive charge in an arc towards your enemies. Or you can also use a very effective guided shot mode. I mentioned the guided bullet last because not only is it pulled off in an excellent responsive way, it's absolutely also essential to progressing through the game and defeating game bosses. You shoot the guided bullet into a radio bubble sort of effect based on little transmitters throughout the game, and can guide it directly, including slowing it down or speeding it up, before ultimately firing the actual shot at a target, maybe around a corner or in an odd direction. This is where a bit of the strategic angle to the think and gun mantra comes into play. And you will die, my friends, you will die a lot. As it turns out, Shine is a magical gun that allows its wielder to respawn an infinite number of times. I'm not entirely sure how it didn't help the Link clone that gives it to you, but not every mystery has a solution. Poor little Rise will die in different ways, from being blasted to bits with his head popping off in a vertical ascent, being vaporized with the skull rolling down a hill, falling into a pit of toxic goo. Not quite a Space Quest level of variety, but enough to infuriate and make me laugh at nearly the same rate. The main issue throughout the game, though, is that it doesn't ramp the difficulty up in a gradual fashion. Some deaths feel a little bit on the cheap side, with mines popping out of the ground, or damage effects that are unpredictable when encountered for the first time. Not an insurmountable problem, but a frustrating one occasionally. The game is also a bit on the short side. I clocked about 6 hours on my playthrough, but that includes a solid hour spent on the last boss battle. The rest of the game had some difficult spots, which involved a number of attempts to clear, and that does elongate the experience, so if you're a master run-and-gun player, yeah, I could easily see this game being done in a 4 to 5 hour range. The areas don't feel short at the time, and they are well paced with combat and puzzle involvement, including a little airship shooting section in the middle, which was pretty badass. I'm just not so sure how much I want to criticize the length, though, because as the credits rolled, I felt like I desperately wanted more game. And yet, if I look back at a game like Portal, it felt exactly the same way then. So it's entirely possible that Rise and Shine is exactly as long as it needed to be in order to be a blast the whole way through and not outstay its welcome. For graphics, I have to say that I love the aesthetic. The game has a retro feel to it, but without resorting to low-fidelity pixel art. Rather, it's got gorgeous backdrops with plenty of detail. The animations on an individual level as far as character and enemies might be a little on the simpler side, but there is often so much going on the screen that I didn't notice it unless I was looking for it. It also makes great use of parallax scrolling, with numerous overlapping background images that give a much grander sense of movement, and includes animations on layers further back as well to keep the world feeling alive, if substantially more destroyed than it should be. Now, as far as performance and options, you're not going to be playing with graphics sliders in Rise and Shine because there aren't any. The launcher gives you screen resolution and a windowed mode select box, and that's it. The title has full controller support, or mouse and keyboard, and you can rebind the keys on both. I found that I enjoyed it far more on mouse and keyboard precisely because of some of the aiming that is required in order to win the day. My biggest gripe with the game is actually a very simple one. The target reticle by default is not visible, and it becomes visible when you right-click on the mouse in order to bring shine out before shooting something. So every time you die, you're going to want to unholster the gun briefly to get the target reticle on the screen, otherwise your first shot will be blind, which seems to me to be a simple mechanical oversight. From a performance perspective, I did not drop below 60 frames per second throughout the game, which is essential for a title with precise controls done in this way. But on a GTX 1070, I'd expect no less either. So, why did I start this off by asking you whether you've tried two similar products out where one is clearly superior? Well, another game came out recently called Rad Rogers World 1, which is another retro-styled sentient gun child murder trainer. The difference is that Rad Rogers, being developed by Interceptor and published by 3D Realms, has all of the comedic stylings of Duke Nukem and all of the subtlety. That's not praise. It is so in your face about the crude humor, swearing, and innuendo that most of it falls flat. Meanwhile, Rise and Shine maintains a level of subtlety in its humor and game culture reference that is endearing, and rather than push me away, made me wish there was more game when the credits rolled. I'm absolutely certain that I missed numerous references and jokes made along the way, and there were a lot of them to catch, mostly in the background to be found by those people who were seeking them. Let's wrap this up. Rise and Shine is a 4 to 5 hour game for $15. That's a bit rough on the length side of the coin, but for a game that is this beautiful, detailed, funny, emotional, and with a heavy dose of retro game culture self-awareness, the only time I stopped playing was when I spent an hour on a single boss fight and needed to take a break before I smashed my keyboard. That boss fight incidentally turned out to be the final boss, and every time I died, it was my fault. The game was fair, and it was my own inability to master the mechanics that was my downfall. The sound design is spot on. The game conveys a huge amount through its areas with only text-based dialogue and the occasional emotive grunt. It's a frantic experience, it's a slow, thoughtful experience, it hit all the right notes, and is a game that I can absolutely thoroughly recommend. Rise and Shine is available on Xbox One and PC via Steam for $15 US on January 13th, 2017. I've got to say, Adult Swim has really been killing it lately with their game publishing division, and this shiny little Thinkin' Gun game by Super Mega Team is no exception. As I mentioned earlier, I'm playing on an i7-5820K with 16GB of RAM and a GTX 1070. Thank you very much for checking out my review of Rise and Shine. Reviews are something that I do regularly on the channel, though I also do a weekly news wrap-up for the game industry, and my flagship is a short-form, rapid-fire editorial on game industry topics called Feature Creep. I'd love it if you stuck around by hitting the subscribe button, and even better, hit that bell so you get a notification the next time a video goes up. But if not, I hope that I've at least showed you what you wanted to know about Rise and Shine. My name is Tarmack. Thanks for watching.